Have you ever found yourself having a conversation with someone who wasn't even there? Maybe you were driving home, taking a shower, or lying awake in bed. Suddenly, your mind created an entire scene. You explained yourself perfectly. You won an argument that never happened. Or perhaps you imagined someone criticizing you, rejecting you, or finally recognizing everything you've accomplished. None of it was real, and yet your heart reacted as if it were. Your emotions changed. Your body responded. Sometimes you even smiled, felt angry, or became anxious because of a conversation that existed only inside your mind. If you've ever wondered why this keeps happening, the answer is far more fascinating than most people realize. Psychologists believe these imaginary conversations are rarely random. In many cases, they're clues. They reveal how your brain deals with uncertainty, emotion, and the endless desire to predict what comes next. And once you understand why your mind does this, you'll begin to see these mental stories in a completely different way. Most people assume they're simply daydreaming. But your brain isn't wasting time. It's running simulations. Long before you face a difficult conversation, make an important decision, or walk into an unfamiliar situation, your brain quietly begins testing different possibilities. It imagines success. It imagines failure. It imagines every possible reaction someone could have. This ability is one of the greatest advantages of the human mind. It's the reason athletes visualize winning before competitions. It's why musicians mentally rehearse performances before stepping on stage. It's why experienced professionals often imagine important meetings before they happen. Your imagination was designed to prepare you for reality. But sometimes that system becomes overactive. Instead of preparing for one important event, your mind starts preparing for everything. A simple comment someone made earlier in the day turns into a 20-minute imaginary debate. A message that hasn't been answered becomes dozens of possible explanations. A meeting next week suddenly feels like something you need to survive today. Without realizing it, your brain begins living inside possibilities instead of the present moment. But why? The answer isn't imagination itself. The answer is uncertainty. The human brain dislikes uncertainty more than almost anything else. When something feels unfinished, unclear, or emotionally unresolved, your mind keeps returning to it again and again. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for unfinished experiences to remain active in our minds long after they happen. That's why an awkward conversation is often harder to forget than a pleasant one. That's why you replay embarrassing moments from years ago while barely remembering ordinary days. Your brain keeps searching for an ending that feels complete. So it creates one, inside your imagination. Maybe this time you'll say exactly the right words. Maybe this time they'll finally understand you. Maybe this time everything ends the way you wanted it to. But no matter how many times your mind rewrites the story, real closure rarely comes from imaginary conversations. Because the problem was never the conversation itself, it was the emotion attached to it. What's interesting is that not everyone imagines the same kinds of scenarios. Some people constantly imagine arguments, others repeatedly imagine future success. Some picture themselves finally proving everyone wrong. Others imagine everything falling apart before anything has even happened. These patterns aren't random. They're reflections of what your mind is trying hardest to manage. Someone who fears rejection often imagines difficult conversations. Someone seeking approval imagines receiving praise or recognition. Someone struggling with anxiety imagines disasters before they happen, believing that expecting the worst somehow makes them safer. Ironically, the brain often mistakes worrying for preparation. It believes that if it thinks through every possible outcome, it can prevent pain. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of imagining can eliminate uncertainty. Another reason these mental stories become so addictive is because they give you something reality never can: complete control. Inside your imagination, you know exactly what to say. People respond exactly the way you expect. The timing is perfect. The ending makes sense. Reality is different. People interrupt. They misunderstand you. Unexpected things happen. Conversations rarely follow the script you've created in your head. And because imagined situations feel easier to control, your brain naturally starts returning to them. Not because you want to escape reality, but because certainty feels comforting. Over time, though, there's a hidden cost. The more satisfying your imaginary world becomes, the less satisfying real life can seem. You begin rehearsing instead of participating, thinking instead of acting, preparing instead of experiencing. Without realizing it, your mind spends more energy predicting life than actually living it. But here's the important part. Imagination isn't the enemy. It's one of the greatest tools humans possess. Every invention, every work of art, every scientific discovery began as something that existed only inside someone's mind. The problem begins only when imagination replaces experience instead of supporting it. Healthy imagination prepares you. Unhealthy imagination traps you. So the next time you catch yourself replaying a conversation that never happened, or imagining a future that may never arrive, don't immediately ask yourself, "Why do I keep doing this?" Ask a different question. What emotion is my brain trying to resolve? That single question changes everything. Because those imaginary conversations aren't random. They're signals. They're your mind revealing what still feels uncertain, unfinished, or emotionally important. Once you recognize the emotion beneath the story, you no longer need to believe every scenario your brain creates. Some of those stories are useful rehearsals. Many are simply echoes of fear, hope, regret, or longing. And the more clearly you can separate imagination from reality, the more present you'll become in the moments that actually matter. Because your mind can imagine 1,000 conversations, but only one of them will ever truly happen. And real life will always teach you more than any story your imagination could ever write.